Alright, internet, it's time to lock and load. We're going big game hunting. Let's knock some of these seasons down a peg or two. When you spend as much time in the online Survivor community as I do, you see a lot of rankings and discussions on what people consider the best seasons of the show. So, I figured let's have some fun and poke the bear. Rile up the discussion a little more by talking about seasons I think get more praise than they deserve. Of course, everyone is entitled to their opinion, and feel free to disagree with me, but also you're wrong and here's why. Before I get to number 5, let me know the 5 seasons you think are overrated from your perspective. I think the terms overrated and underrated are a little vague given they're based on each person's perspective of the common opinion, wherever that's derived from. Could be social media, online communities, official publications who have ranked the seasons, or even Jeff Probst's takes. That's the best part about this video, whatever you think goes, and that's okay. At number 5, I have a season that I think is going to get a mixed reception for being here, and that is season 40, Winners at War. I rank this season in this video's top 5 because I regularly see it ranked as one of the best seasons in the show's history, at least in the top 10, if not higher, and even I myself need to be called out for my immense bias as it is currently sitting just outside my top 10. Whoops, just blindsided myself. And I get why it generally curries a top spot. It's got arguably the strongest cast ever. It's the Super Bowl of Survivor. 20 winners are back, and while I think there are a handful of snubs, they overall did a good job of getting some names I never expected to see again. Yul is back. Ethan? Danny? That said, I can't help but admit it's my Survivor super fandom hype that blocks out a lot of the criticism this season rightfully deserves, because while the cast is incredible top to bottom, the production decisions with all the twists absolutely do this season a disservice and take away from what could have made it the greatest of all time. On top of there being a 20-person cast, it also features the Edge of Extinction, which means we have 2 returnees, making it actually a 22-person cast. And with only so much screen time available, the episodes begin to get cramped when there's 20 people per episode on screen. You combine that with the twists and advantages and the fire token shenanigans, and a lot of scenes revolve less around the players, these all-star winners that we want to see, and more around the trinkets. The season absolutely needed longer episodes to contain all of this, because a lot of the post-merge episodes feel like a haze of Survivor happening, but I really can't easily tell you what the heck is actually going on, even after just watching the episode. What the heck is even happening? Who is with who again? Why is this person a target? So many of the relationships just feel underdeveloped or just not fleshed out. The season feels bloated by the producers, when really the cast is all we ever needed. The gameplay all falls apart later into the endgame, where Denise and Ben kind of just roll over. Meanwhile, Natalie comes back from being the first boot and almost wins. And y'all know this, I love me some Natalie Anderson, but I'm gonna take the bias away and just say straight up, Edge of Extinction, I don't need it. I have also heard from a lot of the winners that there was a lot of drama on the Edge, yet we saw almost none of it because they needed time to show players going on scavenger hunts for fire tokens that ultimately didn't matter. Yes, Tony winning is wild, and I still love a lot of the season, but that's largely because I love the cast and the callbacks. But if I'm being honest with myself, a lot of what this season is stuffed with would make for a mediocre to poor season on any other day, more often than not. Number 4 is perhaps a spicier take because I have season 27, Blood vs. Water, in my top 5 overrated, as it is a season that's always just kinda happened. But I've never been very excited by it at almost any point. The pre-merge, the swap, the post-merge, it's all kinda by the books. It features a cast of half-returning players and their loved ones, and the cast itself is just all sorts of random, which seemed to be a theme for this era of the show, given we just saw Fans vs. Favorites 2 as well. Rupert is the biggest name, but well, he's also the first boot by choice, because we need to make way for Redemption Island returning. I'll never be the first person to give this twist its flowers, although I do think it's in this season it makes for the best TV of the 3 of its iterations. It's better here because of the family twist, but I still don't like it enough to want it back ever again. Beyond that, I'm I'm mostly indifferent to just a lot of the cast and the overall trajectory of the season. Go figure, the returning players dominate out of the gate. The newbie players are just mostly plus ones to their veteran loved ones who steal the show. We do get some standouts like Hayden, who's also a veteran Big Brother player and winner. Okay, but the rise of Sierra is decent. Her decision to force a rock draw is the highlight of the entire season. Meanwhile, the decision to vote out her mom is amusingly overrated in its own right. It never really mattered. Vetus happened, but then I'm also aware of the preseason gaming that went on between the returning players and how Vetus was tied to Aris, who was tied to Jervis, and Tina, who were tied to Tyson, and suddenly the boot order starts to make a little more sense, as does Vetus surviving the swap. It's all fine and good, but that's it. I've always felt like this season is just average. Tyson mostly dominates, but not outright, but it's still a steamroll, and the newbies that enable it to happen aren't really exciting enough for me to feel bad for them. I think the pre-merge is a little more fun with the Brad Culpepper arc of it all, but then you get Colton being Colton, and I don't know, I'm ready to move on. I think my third pick is gonna add a lot more spice because I know there are a lot of people out there who love this season, who regard it as top 10, who have a lot of great things to say about it, as well I have myself, but for me, it's okay. I am talking about Season 10, Survivor Palau. The one where Tom steamrolls after the Karor tribe steamrolls the Oolong tribe. And yes, I know, watching Oolong get decimated is unique in and of itself. It's wild that a whole tribe is obliterated, and it's a pretty unique storyline to follow given Bobby, John, and Steph rise in their ashes one season later, let alone getting the chance to watch Steph manage a post-merge all on her own. But I don't think Palau is altogether that great of a season of Survivor. Oolong is a dysfunctional hot mess tribe, but as far as dysfunctional hot mess tribes go, I don't find them that entertaining. They're just bad at the game all around. Like, what are Ashley, Jeff, Kim, Ibrahim doing? Jolanda lasts one episode. Angie is okay as an underdog who doesn't really triumph. And then you get Bobby John, who doesn't exactly pop. I personally think most of his best stuff is in the next season. James and Stephanie carry this tribe, but given their drama, the Oolong drama, takes up half the season and most of it's pre-merge, I don't know. And if I'm being brutal, Karor isn't that much greater. The women on this tribe are kinda pathetic and don't do much except inadvertently tank their games for Tom and Ian. And do not come for me, I enjoy the Karen and Katie rivalry and how Tom and Ian's friendship ebbs and flows, ultimately culminating in the most epic challenge in Survivor history, the longest endurance challenge ever. It does kind of put a cap on the first 10 seasons of the show, and I like that. But I think the road to get there this season lacks suspense and is overhyped by the community for its entertainment value. And then you get the big underdog story in Steph, which is the most captivating part because we spend so much time watching her put up with the misery that was Oolong, and it doesn't really go anywhere. I think Tom is beloved and his reputation carries this season, and the season synopsis is pretty funny. A whole tribe is wiped out, what the heck? And yeah, all of this carries its reputation, and I don't think it's enough. And now we start throwing punches. Internet, are you ready for number 2? I don't think you're ready for number 2. Look, I'm not saying this season is shit. I am just saying it's not what I think a top 10 season of Survivor is. Let alone top 5, let alone arguably the best season ever. I am talking about season 31, Survivor Cambodia Second Chance. Another all-star season, and you start to notice a trend. It's almost like a fairly strong cast wipes away any other criticism a season might incur. Cambodia is a hype season, rightfully so. It is a lot of fun to consider with its theme. The cast just bounces around like pinballs. One of the most strategically top-heavy seasons ever, alongside Winners at War, and the location of Cambodia is pretty damn cool. They also have a nighttime challenge. What the heck? Why can't we get more of that? And a pink tribe buff? Where did the originality go? And yeah, look, Cambodia does have stuff going for it. My biggest problem with this season, and why I think it's one of the most overrated, is the overall editing of the season. If you go back and rewatch, you'll notice the antics on the season are few and far between. It is such a strategic cast that it's mostly all we get, strategy. Half the cast are characters, but their character is snuffed in favor of their strategy, which for me leaves some entertainment value to be desired. How they were able to make Keith Nail so irrelevant is beyond me. How the producers were annoyed that Kelly Wigglesworth didn't play a modern cutthroat game and decided to just edit her out and ignore her is pretty much the closest thing I've gotten to Survivor sacrilege. How Abby went from stealing the spotlight to being irrelevant at the merge is bizarre. Shireen, Monica, Vetus, Woo, they don't do much. Varner is not my cup of tea and more so annoys me with his antics, and it sucks to see Terry go the way he does. I do like Jeremy, but he is also kind of a gamebot here, and then we get the literal gamebot in Spencer, who talks nothing but strategy all season, only to get blown out at the end, in spite of learning how to say "I love you" to his girlfriend at the family visit. It's a storyline. I do like Savage and Fishback and their rivalry, or how Joe is the white whale who turns into a rat that enables the epic Wentworth idol play, the highlight of the season by far. And while I love Kelly's deep run as an underdog, I also kind of wish from a narrative perspective that she had been able to win in the end. The no votes final 6 is juicy, but given how irrelevant Keith and Kimmy were, I kind of knew where it was headed. Again, before you throw that first punch, I'm not saying it's a bad season, just that it's a number 2 in a top 5, as I regularly see it ranked as one of the best of all time. I think it's the most game-changing season ever. I think it's top 5 where the producers pivoted heavily toward focusing on the game, but I also want a little more from an all-star season, as it's not just the game in and of itself that I'm here for. At number 1, we have a season where I think if you're not too deep in the online Survivor community, you might not see this one coming, but if you are, then you probably won't be shocked. Or you might even argue at this point it's underrated, which I don't get because I think it's still overrated after all this time, especially by the greater community, and that is season 13, Cook Islands. You know, the one where the producers divided the cast by race, introduced a bunch of twists at very convenient times out of the blue, changed the final 2 to a final 3 to accommodate an underdog alliance, and overall, we're expecting the season to be such a shit show it would end Survivor as we know it. Instead, it just ended the contracts with a lot of sponsors. Cook Islands, the first true 20-person cast where the show didn't know what to do with all these people, so they just decided to ignore most of them. This season is one of the worst edited in the history of the show, to the point where there is an argument for it being the worst edited ever. There's data out there that would back up that claim, but even then, just an observation of this cast would tell you what I mean. You've got Yule, you've got Ozzy, you've got Penner, you've got Candace from Raro Tribe. That guy Billy awkwardly falls in love with her. Meanwhile, Parvati is in here by name only because her reputation leaves something to be desired by the time she's booted. If it weren't for her following seasons, I honestly can't say Parv is anything too special on this one. The underlying point here is that there's not much to work with across the board. It's a large cast that doesn't entertain much at all. Outside of Cowboy in the pre-merge, this is one of the least enjoyable casts ever. There's just not many laughs. None of the big players are all that fun. Ozzy is kind of a dick and entitled, but he's really good at challenges. As much as I like Yule, he is kinda stiff and robotic. And the rest of the cast are all kind of dislikable villains or mostly invisible. This season is remembered well because of its I2 underdog storyline, where the 4 of them overcome the odds, which is great. I was rooting for them. I was so excited to see it happen. It's a season I recommend for all newcomers because you're gonna ultimately probably enjoy where it goes. And I get why people love this. It sells a story. But then I look deeper into how this sausage was made, and I start to raise eyebrows. The mutiny, the bottle twist, the early jury starting, the change to a final 3, the stories I have heard behind the scenes don't paint a pretty picture, especially when you start to consider how awkward this season began with the race twist. It all feels so forced, so contrived, so unusual compared to what the best this show has produced, and to see it regularly considered one of the best seasons by half the fan base is what makes it ripe for the number 1 spot on this list. Apologies if these are your top 5 favorite seasons, but these are what I consider the top 5 most overrated seasons of Survivor. Either way, let me know what you think about my picks and what you would include in your top 5. A big thank you to my patrons for all your support, for not thinking that I'm overrated. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to tell me why I'm wrong on your way out, and I will see you in the next one. Once I reconsider everything I just said, you know what? I think these are now the top 5 most underrated.
You pissed everyone in this game off. Hope you're happy with second place. I just think that you played yourself out tonight, and I'm so disappointed. It defiled me. It makes me, I feel sick to my stomach. I couldn't control myself. I snapped on him and told him how I felt about him and called him out, and I think that he's a filthy, miserable rat.